In this video, I'm going to be sharing my opinion and my experience that comes from owning and using Canon's latest 400DO IS2. So the lens is a fixed super telephoto, 400mm focal length with a maximum aperture of f4. In the Canon range, there is no other fixed 400mm lens with IS or with a fixed or maximum f4 aperture. The DO part of the name really has to do with an optical design. It stands for diffractive optics. So what it means to us is that Canon are able to make a lens that's a little more compact for its focal length. So it's a bit lighter than we would expect and a little bit smaller. But despite the more compact form and the lighter weight, there's very little image quality that's sacrificed. Almost everything on the 400f4DO IS2 is new. The new lens also has the latest 4-stop plus Canon image stabilization with 3 different user modes. The lens also comes with fluorine coatings on the front element and on the back element to make it easier to clean. And then the whole thing is pretty much built exactly to the same standards that any of the high-end Canon super telephotos are built to. So a pretty rugged, robust piece of equipment. Handling is the 400f4DO's strong point. Because it's fairly compact for a 400mm lens and it's very light, hand holding it is very easy. It's also easy to track moving subjects with it because it's so light. Because it's a fixed lens, my left hand doesn't have to do any zooming, so that's also something that makes hand holding a little bit easier. To help in this regard, I put a lens plate onto my own 400DO, just giving me somewhere to rest my left hand, and also makes it easy for me to carry it. Switches that control image stabilization and the focusing setup are stiffer than on the old 400DO, and you can't bump them accidentally like you could on the old lens. And then the DO Mark II also has Canon's very smooth tripod collar with the little clicks that let you know when you're at right angles. It makes it easy when you want to get the camera set up on a tripod and get it level. 400mm is pretty much a sweet spot for me personally for the kind of wildlife photography that I do, particularly with regard to photographing big mammals. So this lens's fixed focal length is pretty much at an ideal working range for me. It's a little bit on the short side for birds, unless they are very big birds or unless you're able to approach them very closely. What's really nice on the 400DO is that it's an f4 lens. So that means combined with 400mm of focal length, I can open the aperture all the way to f4 when the light is getting low. So when I'm working before sunrise or on heavily overcast days, or when I'm working after sunset and some mammals are just deciding to get moving, I can get enough shutter speed. And then of course, f4 maximum aperture means that this lens can blur backgrounds quite powerfully when you've got distracting backgrounds or distracting foregrounds. You can take care of it by shooting wide open at f4. Because of the 400DO's strong performance optically when I use it bare, it's able to take a 1.4 times Canon extender very well, and that creates a 560mm 5.6 combination. So now you're getting into a focal length that's pretty useful for birds and also good for distant subjects, places where you, as a wildlife photographer, you can't get closer because you may have shy animals, or where you can't go off-road. With the 1.4 extender, it's not too heavy. It's still pretty much easy to swing and move around. My own personal choice, once I'm using an extender on a lens like this, I tend to prefer using my Canon 1DX or even the 1DX Mark II. So I find that I get better results, especially with moving subjects. It's perfectly okay to use this combination with the 1.4 extender and any modern Canon body with good results, but I'm lucky enough to be able to make use of the 1Ds and benefit from their autofocus and their speed. With the 7D Mark II mounted on the 400DO and the 1.4 extender, all 65 focus points are available for use. What I don't have with me is Canon's 2x extender, but I have used my 400DO with a 2x extender. Cameras like the 7D Mark II, the 5D Mark III, and the 1DX become limited to just the central autofocus point with the 2x extender. But the newest Canon DSLR bodies like the 5D Mark IV, the 80D and the 1DX Mark II will allow most, if not all, of their focus points to be accessible if you have a 2x extender on the 400DO. Something that hasn't got a whole lot better with the new generation 400DO is minimum focus distance. The lens will only focus just over 3.3 meters. So in that regard, it's not the best choice for trying to get magnification of small subjects that might be close to you. There's a lot of lenses that will do a better job at that. The new image stabilization system on the 400DO works exceptionally well. It's pretty much a real bonus for shooting in low light when shutter speeds are low. I keep mine switched on all the time, and I typically use either mode 1 or mode 3 when I'm hand holding, but all three of the modes are useful. It's also a tripod detecting image stabilization system, so if you put 400DO onto a tripod, the eye system will adjust itself accordingly. Autofocus with this lens is fast and very quiet. You barely hear it and it locks on and snaps on quickly. It performs just as good as any of the Canon fixed super telephoto lenses that I've used. Image quality from the 400DO compared to the old lens, which some felt lacked contrast and perhaps some sharpness, the new lens is a big step forward. Images really good. If I had to compare them to some of the other lenses that I use, they're perhaps a little better than the images from my 100 to 400 IS2, and perhaps not quite as good as the images from my fixed 500 f4 IS2 Canon lens. Further to the image quality, contrast, color, on par with any other L series telephotos, and just sharpness. It sits in between the best of the zoom lenses and the best of the version 2 super telephotos. That's in my opinion, of course. These things are all a little bit subjective. When it comes to vignetting or corner shading, it's really not significant in real world use, the little bit that shows. Also, chromatic aberrations, very, very well dealt with by DO lenses, perhaps even better than a regular Canon L series lens when it comes to that. Background blur is excellent with an f4 aperture, as you can imagine, and also the bokeh or the shape of the way that the lens renders the background is good and improved on the original 400DO. It's always interesting when discussing lenses to just have a look at what other options are on the market before you choose a particular lens. So I've just brought along my 500 f4 here, same max aperture, just 100 millimeters more focal length, but you can see an enormous difference in physical size. Even if I mount the 1.4 extender onto the 400DO, it comes nowhere near the bulk of this version 2500. The 500 definitely the better lens if you need to shoot at 500 millimeters all the time with regard to image quality and background blur, but at the same time the bulk, weight, manageability of that can make it a poor choice. So at least the 400DO gives you an option there where lightweight, manageability are the pluses. Another option to the 400DO is Canon's excellent 100 to 400 IS2. At 400 millimeters, you're getting the same magnification. The 100 to 400 IS2 focuses a lot closer than the 400DO. It's even a bit lighter than the 2 odd kilograms of the DO, and it costs a whole lot less. What it cannot do is shoot at f4 at 400 millimeters, and it also is not as versatile as the 400DO if you put a 1.4 extender on each of them, whereas the 400DO becomes a 560 millimeter 5.6. The 100 to 400 functions with a 1.4 converter, but not with a very usable maximum aperture. A couple of other Canon lenses that are often in the mix when people are considering whether or not to get a 400DO are the EF300 2.8, which I don't have with me at the moment. If you need to shoot at 400 millimeters most of the time, then it's better, in my opinion, to have a 400DO than the 300 with a 1.4 extender attached to it permanently. If you compare the bare lenses to each other, then the 300 usually wins. But put a 1.4 extender on, and the 400DO is the better choice. And then another lens which is often mentioned is Canon's fixed EF400 L 5.6. So that lens is lighter, simpler, costs a whole lot less, but it doesn't have image stabilization. For me, its strongest attributes, its lightweight, its manageability, the fun factor of using a lens so compact and so fast focusing, and very good image quality. Subscribe to this channel if you want to keep getting videos about Canon gear from a wildlife photographer's perspective.